What is up, cinephiles, most especially to my Filipino subscribers. For today's video, I will be dishing out my reviews for Cinemalaya 2022. For those who are not aware what that is, this is a Philippine independent film festival that features the work of Filipino filmmakers, most of which are just young and upcoming. So after 2 years of virtual screenings, the physical festival is now back and it feels good to be back at the CCP theater. I didn't have much time, but I managed to catch 2 days of screening and watch a few good films. So I will be giving out my quick reviews. Let's start first with the opening film of the festival. We have Leonor Will Never Die, directed by Martika, Ramirez, Escobar. Now this one debuted earlier this year in Sundance Film Festival, where it bagged the Special Jury Prize for Innovative Spirit. So in it we have Leonor, played by Sheila Francisco, a retired screenwriter who falls into coma and suddenly finds herself as the action hero of her unfinished screenplay. Now, this is one of the most creative, innovative screenplays that I've seen this year. It's kind of a genre bender because there is a heartwarming story of a mother and son relationship, so there are some melodramatic elements. Then it gets quirky as the movie progresses because we're talking about a story within a story here. So the base story here is the people around Leonor are worried if she's going to wake up in a coma, and then we have a second story here where Leonor goes into her fantasy world, her unfinished screenplay. Whenever it gets into that fantasy world, the aspect ratio changes. It's a 80s action film, and as someone who grew up watching Filipino action films, they captured the essence of it, from its grainy filter, cheesy action scenes, over theatrical villains, and some awkward sex scenes. So I'm not sure how the foreigners are going to view this portion of the movie, but basically if you were born in the 80s or 90s, where what I call the golden era of Philippine action films, excessive melodrama and, cheesy action scenes is the lifeblood of these films. There is this morally upstanding macho man character, which the movie gets it right within this film within a film. Fiction and reality starts to blur, and by the third act, these storylines will converge. So it gets crazier, a lot of out-of-the-box elements. There's a snail here. Leonor talks to her dead son, who's in the form of a ghost. I totally get what the purpose of this movie is, because it works as a tribute or an ode to that Philippine action films. And if that is the key, if that is what they're trying to do, to immortalize that genre, because that is what Leonor represents, I think the movie gets it right. And this movie is easy to like because we have here a protagonist that is just well-fleshed in the early parts of the movie. She's easy to like or sympathize because of her frustrations in her twilight years. Sheila Francisco does a fantastic job of making this character rootable, and as you learn more about her, she has a strained relationship with her other son who is alive. So for Rudy here, the living son of Leonor, the challenge for him is to understand his mother, understand her work of fiction, so he will get that closure. Now, towards the end, you think this is a type of movie that will tie its loose ends, but then it does something almost postmodern, like something even more meta or something that's even more subversive, that it shatters everyone's expectations. It involves a musical number. Now, I'm not a big fan of what happened on the last few minutes of the film. For me, it just took me out of the film, but it didn't completely ruin the movie for me. And this is just a heartwarming film that's just such a crowd pleaser. It managed to give me laughs, it managed to get me emotional, so I'm willing to look past through that. But one thing's for sure, Martika Escobar, now I've seen her short films before, and she is slowly establishing herself as an author. It's exciting to see this new and upcoming filmmaker making a name for herself in the weird cinema. So if you are into absurdist, meta comedy, family movie, I think you should check out Leonor Will Never Die. It does its purpose, not only to immortalize that Philippine action genre in the 80s to 90s, but also to give an ode to the support systems, to the script writers, to the directors, to everyone that built that genre. I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It might be a stretch to say that there are moments in this film that reminded me of Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I guess this is the closest comparison that I can have for that film, and it's a compliment, you know, because this movie is just the best when it's having fun with itself, and I hope this one gets a wide global release. If you want to look for that Filipino humor, this is something that I'm proudly going to recommend. The next one on my list is a film called Blue Room, directed by Asuncion-Dagñalan. And in it we have an indie rock band named the Rebel Rebel. They're a bunch of woke but a bit sheltered teenagers. They found themselves under police arrest for possession of drugs. So instead of following the standard procedures, they found themselves hauled into this VIP room called the Blue Room, where they have the chance to bribe these police officers, and these police officers are very much open to it. So there comes this dilemma: are they going to use their privilege to get themselves out of that situation, or are they going to own up to what they're preaching? Because it's one thing to preach from a privileged standpoint, and another thing to be on the receiving end of the injustice. There are a lot of clash between this band on what they're going to do, and I think this one is a critic on the woke Gen Z. These kids are in the night of rude awakening, and you can see the character development throughout the film because it impacts their songwriting. So should they survive this night, it will definitely change their lives. Because in the early parts of the movie, you can see these teenagers singing radical lyrics, but it's also established that their head are wrapped around their egos, their rich kid problems. So it will be interesting to see if they're going to own up to that. This movie kind of lays out the prejudice and the inequality when it comes to the inept justice system in the Philippines. So if you're a Filipino and you have closely followed former President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs, you know that these stories are based on real life accounts. And there is a segment in this film where they show Manila Police District's secret jail, which reminded me of the documentary Aswang because they also featured that. So this one gets it right when it comes to presenting the inequalities that's happening in the previous administration and possibly up to now. I guess my gripe in this movie is that maybe putting it on the perspective of privileged kids is not the best way to attack this subject matter. So it doesn't come out as potent as it can be. There's something in the script or the direction that kind of feels tame, almost like convenient towards the third act. I wish it went out to darker or more uncomfortable area, but they settled for that route. So all of those thrills, all of the tension that it managed to accumulate by the second act, it starts to lose its steam. And the movie kind of became a little bit preachy towards the end, like it's trying its best to say that it has accomplished something, but the way to get there is, I'm not entirely convinced. Nevertheless, this didn't completely ruin the experience for me because it's engaging all throughout. It has all the conceits of making this a controversial film. The performances are good. Elijah Canlas, I know that he's already a star, so no surprise that he grounds the film. We also get a bunch of new faces here and they did good performances. Singer-musician Juan Carlos here is, I would say, the charm of the film. He steals the scene with his humor, and Soliman Cruz is just menacing as this police officer who seems awfully familiar given the landscape that we had in the previous years. So I'm gonna give this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It has few original songs that are revolutionary and catchy, and for a coming-of-age crime flick, I think this is already decent enough. It's a good reminder that sometimes those who are in power are not using their authority for the best interest, rather for self-serving interest. Now, the next film we have is called The Baseball Player, directed by Carlo Obispo. This one tells the story of Amir, played by Tommy Alejandrino, a 17-year-old Moro child soldier whose father was killed during an all-out war, and now he's torn whether he should follow the footsteps of his father or he should pursue his dream, which is to become a baseball player. Now, I love this film, but I don't think this is the best title of the film because it gives the impression that this one is going to be a sports drama when it's not. You know, we got scenes of him extensively training with his trainer, but I think the main core of this movie is to follow his conflict, choose what path is best for him. And you know, for a single titular character, this is also focused on the story of two people here, the brothers, Amir and Khalid. I love how the screenplay fleshes out their bond. I think the chemistry between these two leads are great. There is a twist in their relationship which I would rather not say, but basically these two brothers are bonded because of their trauma and anxiety. And I know that it's pretty common when I say that this wars tears family apart, it shatters the dreams of the child, but I felt like it's still overlooked, especially if you're privileged. So seeing the grief and the longing from these characters, it deeply affected me. You know, there is a particular scene in this film that I cried, I'm not gonna lie, and it does it so well because this movie slowly gets into you. I think the musical scoring is also outstanding in bringing out the emotions. But this movie is not just a tearjerker for the sake of being a tearjerker, because it poses a lot of sensitive depiction of what a child goes through. Because for Amir here, it feels like he's fighting a war that is started by an earlier generation. And you know, he just feels lost, you feel sorry for him. What he just needs to know is that the military is the enemy, and that's it. No more questions, he's just getting orders from whatever his relatives want him to. So that straightforward execution of choosing your dream versus choosing your obligation, it is well executed. I think this is just a simple film that gets it right. My only gripe would have to be, I wish that the language here, they're speaking in their local dialect, because in the film they're speaking in Tagalog, which kind of brings down a bit the authenticity. I also have to admit, initially I felt like the ending is a bit abrupt, but I felt like in hindsight they have done that to deliver one of the most haunting endings ever. So it breaks your heart. This harrowing story of abandonment needs to be seen by a lot of people, because up to now we have a lot of wars, and you know, the biggest losers here are the children because it just messes them up. I'm gonna give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. For a sensitive topic, I think this movie gets it right and does it effectively. Now, the next one we have is 12 Weeks, directed by Isabelle Matutina. So in it we have a 40-year-old woman named Alice, played by Eigenmann. She decides to end her relationship with her toxic boyfriend here, but soon she finds out that she is actually pregnant from the same guy. So a lot of conflict here. Will she keep the baby or not? Will she fall back to the arms of her toxic boyfriend? So over the course of 12 weeks, we are following her thought process. This one really gets personal because it is a character study, and as the movie progresses, we get to know who Alice is, who is she as a potential mother, who is she as a best friend, who is she as a lover, who is she as a daughter, and sometimes also as an employee, because she is a humanitarian here. So this one kind of challenges our preconceived notions about motherhood, especially in a time that there are still a lot of misogyny against women, and most especially the hardship of what it means to be a mother, to be that sex that bears children. So I think this one is also sensitive in its execution. It didn't need to be subtle because the issues are laid out, and I'm fine with that. I actually admire Alice's character here because she is a self-made woman. She doesn't need any man to support her. She knows her worth. She keeps on saying early on that this is her body and this is her decision, but then there are external factors, opinions from different people, significant others that will probably sway her decision. So it's a bit heartbreaking to see this character spiral down as her decision gets affected by different factors here, and different characters in the film are having their own opinions on what to view of this baby. Is this a baby or is this just a lump of blood that you can still abort? So regardless what your views are on abortion, I will try my best not to put any of my personal views, because in our country, in the Philippines, abortion is still illegal. And for a conservative country, I know this is a highly controversial issue. So I'm glad that the movie didn't blatantly pick a side. It just showed us her struggle. Is she going to be a bad mom if she decides to abort the child? Or is she going to be a bad mom if she tries to keep her child, but at the same time, her child will be absent of a good parental figure because she has a toxic boyfriend, and she admits that she herself is busy and she gets assigned to different regions in the Philippines where it poses risk to her life. There comes the chance of possibly orphaning the child. So she's going to have a tough time in her hands. And Max Eigenmann here is just so fantastic in this role. I mean, I felt like I'm not giving much praise when I say that she imbibes the role. To see the suffering of this character, the conflict, her silences, she just delivers everything and more. I also love here the best friend character played by Claudia Enriquez as the voice of reason. So overall, I think this movie is worthy to be seen because women are still struggling with inequality. I also think that it's a smart move to set the backdrop of this film with a martial law scenario to emphasize that it's hard to be a woman in a time of tyranny. So I'm gonna give this one a 4.5 out of 5. For a character study, the script is flawless. It fleshes well the characters, the rationale for doing the things that they have to do, and it's just not serious all throughout because there are moments here of snarky humor that I really enjoyed. I think this is the strongest film out of the films that I've watched in the competition films. So yeah, that's it for my review for Cinemalaya 2022 films. How about you? Have you seen any of these films? Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, hit that like and subscribe to me if you haven't yet for weekly reviews. Thank you so much guys for watching. Until then, I'll see you all on the next one.